Hello and welcome to all the Hylians out there. I'm Joe here with me, my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we've got another Zelda video for you all. This time we're going to be getting into a bit of a prelude to Ocarina of Time in preparation for essentially a lore slash story walkthrough of Ocarina of Time. I think it's time to start building up towards that. We're probably almost half done Link to the Past, so it only seems fitting to start to get into Ocarina of Time and the lore contained therein. We're not going to touch on the actual story per se immediately. We're not going to be dealing with when Link wakes up from a dream, or a nightmare I should say, or Navy flying through Kokiri village. No, what we're going to touch upon is a much darker subject. War! What's it good for? Money. I'm kidding. No. This war was not of any real use to anyone. The war that preceded the events of Ocarina of Time is one of the darkest events in Hyrule's history, in every meaning of the word. Not much is known. Every bit of dialogue we get about it makes it seem like a very bleak period. It was a time when the royal family was sundered and began to war with each other, and when the different provinces, or I should say counties and duchies, probably, of Hyrule, warred with each other, possibly for the Triforce, possibly for the crown, or both. For many, many years, possibly generations, Hyrule fell into a period of non-stop internal conflict and strife. This might be one of the darkest periods in Hyrule's history, and it brought the royal family to the brink of destruction. The line of Hylia was probably almost ended with this war, and it was into this conflict that Link was born. Born to war, this leaves in no doubt that this Link would not have the kind of peaceful life that other Links might expect later on. His would be a time of war, conflict, and tragedy. The conflict itself, as said, there's very little known about it. Thematically, though, sets the stage for the events of Ocarina of Time, is possibly why most of the nobility of the different royal lines, such as those of the Goron and the Zora, are a little nervous about internal problems and are keen to quickly basically give the job of dealing with the problem to Link and just crossing their fingers and going, oh please, oh please, oh please, oh please don't let this explode, because they've just gone through generations of non-stop bloodshed. And given that we don't actually know much about the Zora King or Darunia's own parents, I think it's safe to guess that they probably didn't pass away peacefully in their beds. And given that Zelda's father was fairly keen to trust Ganondorf, who fought in this war for conquest, but was ultimately forced to recognize when the tide was turning and to swear his allegiance to Hyrule's king. But given the kind of blind faith the king has in Ganon, it seems likely that Ganon helped clinch a victory for him, possibly the final battle in the war. I know Hylians age differently from humans because they're basically elves, but I'd argue that Ganon is probably the equivalent of 30, almost 40 years old in Hylian term. He's probably almost middle-aged, and he probably has quite a bit of fighting under his belt. He's likely fought in quite a few of the battles, and we know he did play a role in the Civil War. How this relates to Link is that at the time when the war was still kind of going on but waning, Link's father was killed. A knight of Hyrule, he had done his duty to his king, likely Zelda's father, fighting for honor, but also to protect his family and keep them out of the conflict. What does his knighthood tell us about Link's lineage? Well, it tells us he was probably of almost middle class, or possibly a household knight in the service of the royal family, likely the latter, which would put him kind of not exactly at the bottom of the pecking order, but he's not the highest ranking guy in the castle, but he is another warrior. He'd definitely be above the serfs and merchants who occupy Hyrule proper. So he was, if anything, of lower nobility, but not one who had his own keep, I imagine. Or if he did, he obviously lost his fort and there was nothing left in the end of the inheritance he might have once wanted to leave Link. Like I said, there's not much that's known.
Personally, I think that Mother felt it necessary to take Link and run might tell us that there was some importance in Link's father's role.
To an extent, but he's just there to die. I suspect, like I said, he was just a regular knight and probably a faithful and leal subject. I would guess that when she fled, she probably did so to an extent irrationally. But here's the weird thing. Why flee into the Kokiri forest? The thing is, the forest is a place of nightmares and gossip and of dark fairy stories. People fear the forest for the most part because the Kokiri don't really come out, and there's believed to be monsters in the Lost Woods. What this tells us is that there was something behind her that she feared more than what was in there. She was scared of something that was outside the forest. The implication I would read into it is one of two things. Either Link's father was on the losing end of a battle and she ended up taking her son and fleeing, which suggests that maybe had he served directly under the king, Hyrule Castle was probably taken, and the father of Zelda had to flee and then regroup and retake his castle. And she fled in an irrational manner into the forest while probably being pursued. She may have been used as a decoy. Zelda was about the same age as Link, and maybe there would have been an attempt to seize Zelda herself. So it's possible that Zelda's mother also fled and that Link's mom would have been used as a bit of a decoy. But she panicked and fled into the woods to dodge her pursuers, which would have served the royal family well. I kind of like this idea because it suggests that Link's parents were leal subjects to the royal family, just as Link would later be to the royal family. It might be a case where Ganon gave chase, or more specifically, his two mommy figures, the witches, though I'm not sure why they would have chased a baby Link. So yeah, we've got very little actual concrete knowledge and more theories to go off. But what is clear is that she fled into the woods and entrusted her son to the Great Deku Tree. And the Great Deku Tree did not take this duty lightly, but knew that there was something of destiny about this boy. Very likely, he could tell Link was in possession of that most sacred of gifts, the spirit of the hero. This was the new Link. And so the Great Deku Tree obviously named him Link and raised him as pretty much his favorite amongst the Kokiri. Right there, his backstory was one of tragedy and death, and would weirdly not be raised with any knowledge of his parents. Instead, his parents were to be Saria and the Great Deku Tree, which, all things considered, was probably for the best. But tell us what you think of this video and of this prelude to Ocarina of Time. Hopefully we'll soon be getting into the actual game. Don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Link taking down Ganon for the final time.